You studied computer science at UC San Diego, and you used to work as a programmer. You never formally studied astronomy, but it's a huge part of your work. So what got you passionate about space travel?
I don't know. I think it's just a lifelong hobby that I've had. A large part of it is my dad was a dork, or is a dork. He's fine, and my mom is a dork as well. And so I just kind of grew up in a science-loving family.
Some of the writers that have influenced you, people like Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, they tend to explore, big ideas about what future societies might look like. Contrast that with your work. The Martian is really about the details about space travel. Why do you like to focus on these kind of smaller, more granular things in your work?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it's because I really love problem solving, and I like watching characters solve problems when I'm watching a show or reading a book. And so I kind of want to write stories like that. I'm less interested in speculating about the future of humanity and more interested in specific things.
And you're really big on getting the science right in your work. Some people might say, science fiction, it's fiction after all. Why is it important for you to get the science right in your work?
Well, it's important to me because that's kind of the path I've chosen. I like hard science fiction. I like realistic science. Part of it is almost laziness in that if you don't ever break the laws of physics in your story, then you don't need to make up what happens when they break. And you don't need to answer uncomfortable questions like, why don't they just use a transporter to, transport a bomb onto the enemy ship, and, stuff like that. That's part of it, but also for me, just watching TV, I always like a little bit when there's this blatant violation of physics. But then I guess it's sort of an uncanny valley. I don't like it when there's like a little bit of breaking the laws of physics, but if you start really breaking them, then I'm happy again. So if you have a warp drive, fine, as long as you're internally consistent on how that works.
Your novel, The Martian, though, is so accurate on certain things that it's actually being taught in high school classrooms now, right? And not in English lit classes, but in science classes. How are teachers using this book to teach their students something about science?
Well, I think the biggest problem that teachers have in high school, and it's also being used in junior high, is getting the kids engaged in the science, getting them to care about it, because there's a lot more interesting stuff going on. And this gives them a story where they kind of root for the protagonist, and then the teacher can stop and say okay, well, now Mark has this problem. Okay, and here's his problem, and they set up the math problem. Now, how many potatoes does Mark need to grow to survive for this long? And the kids end up doing creative problem solving with a goal instead of just being given numbers and formulas and told to solve it.
It's less abstract in that way.
Yeah, it's more tangible, and it's hopefully for them more fun.
So you have a new book coming out this fall called Artemis. It's been described as a heist thriller on the moon. Yeah. We don't want to go into spoiler territory here, but talking about science, what sort of scientific topics might you be exploring in this new book?
Well, for this one, the story is more, it takes place in a city on the moon, and the main character is a woman who's a small-time criminal, and she gets in way over her head. So it's really much more a crime/heist, caper kind of novel. So it's not so intensely focused on the science as The Martian was. But it's still completely scientifically accurate. So I designed a moon city from the ground up. I figured out how they do everything, like how to take local minerals on the moon and smelt them into aluminum, and where they get their oxygen, and how they deal with all the problems that you'd have. And it's all solid.